Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Walters Wanderings Travel Podcast. My name is Scott Walters. I am the owner and dream creator at Walters Wanderings Travel, checking off your bucket list since 2014. And today I have a very interesting and outstanding guest that's going to join me and talk about weight loss and travel with weight loss and all kinds of stuff like that. Her name is Amy Feinberg-Trufas. She has a new book out that talks about her journey, which is actually very amazing. And she's with us right now. But before we get to her and have her say hello, if you mention Amy's book, and if you buy Amy's book and can show me a receipt, I will reimburse you for the cost of the book with your travel booking of 4 nights or more. So it's a real simple thing. And Amy's right here, and she's very happy to join us today on the podcast. So, Amy, first of all, thank you very much. And I guess second of all, why don't we start at the very beginning? Because they say Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither does anyone get to be, very, for lack of a better term, obese in just one day. It just never happens like that.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure to be here. And I really like the angle that you thought of today, which is how to survive on a trip or on a cruise or on a vacation, how to enjoy it and how to still kind of, honor the commitment that you've made with yourself to adopt a happy lifestyle, a healthy lifestyle. So to talk about it a little bit, to your point, I didn't gain all that weight overnight. I had decades of being what they call morbidly obese, which means more than 100 pounds above what's considered a normal weight range. And I lived that life for like 4 decades, maybe a little bit more. I had experiences, everything from fat camp to consistent, trying to force exercise to dieting, extreme dieting, fasting, the cabbage soup diet, the banana diet, the shakes only diet, the fasted 12 hours diet. Like I tried everything and nothing worked. It's because diets don't work. That's my, everybody jokes around. The first 3 letters of the word diet are die. And I felt like I was dying when I tried to lose weight because I didn't like the idea that I had to commit to deprivation. I like to eat a little bit of chocolate sometimes. I love good food and I'm still passionate about good food. But clearly what was adaptive in my life, which was reaching for food when I had an emotion, spun out in a way that became maladaptive and wouldn't work for me anymore. So this is all in the book, but my father was talking with my son on his deathbed and said something to him that like shook me to my core. And that became my why. And for the first time, I was able to see a clear path that it was my job to take better care of myself. I still didn't know how, Scott. Like I had no idea. If someone told me, oh, you have to lose 150 pounds, tell me what your plan is tomorrow, I never would have started because I couldn't put that plan together. But what I could do was make a few simple commitments to myself. Be patient, be curious, get help if I need to, buy a good pair of shoes. Very simple things that I had not up to that point been doing. So fast forward, this journey unfolds for me and I start to create this relationship with the food that instead of feeling like deprivation or, being continually in angst of what was I going to eat next and was I going to screw up and could I actually do this? It became ease for me. And that's what the name of my book is, Food, Eat with Ease Every Day. Because I finally got to the point where I wasn't negatively obsessed with food. Like I said, food is still my passion. I love good food, but now it's working for me instead of against me.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And again, it took you decades to become 310 pounds, and it took you time to whittle yourself down to the 160 or whatever it is you are now. Describe how that going down in the weight thing works. Obviously, there are valleys, there are plateaus, there are moments of, oh my God, what am I doing? So describe how that kind of thing works.
Absolutely. So I say in my book, losing weight is not a linear experience. And by the way, neither is maintenance. I'm one of these people, I've never successfully lost weight. So I thought in my mind, and this is probably going to sound funny to people who knew better, but I didn't know better. Once I lost the weight, I'd magically be a thin person and I could eat whatever I want. I could be one of those people that, who eats whatever they want and they never gain any weight. So no, seriously, Scott, I thought, okay, I'm going to be at my goal and I'm going to do anything I want because I'm not a fat person anymore. Well, not only was the trip to um, attaining a healthy weight nonlinear, in other words, just like you said, I had peaks and valleys. I had days where I screwed up. I had days, I never really felt like I was going to give up this time. And I think that was what was so different about this. And the reason that it worked for me was because, if you remember, I said that I got my reason from my dad's deathbed words. I held on to that reason. It was so clear to me that it was not wishy-washy for the first time in my life. And the thing that my father said to my son was, in life, it comes down to this: you have to make the life you want and be happy. And that may sound completely mundane, but I'm telling you, if you break that apart, my father, knowing that he was dying, distilled everything he thought about his life that he could say to a 13-year-old that my son could then take with him as they faced a future apart. And there's a brilliance in it, and it's a simple brilliance. And my dad was a brilliant man, but it's a very simple concept.
And it's very profound, and it's profound, and it's in an economy of words, and I think the best profundity out there is always within an economy of words. If people pontificate and bloviate, the message is diluted and lost because people's eyes glaze over and all that. But what your father said in less than 10 words, basically, is truly actually a good motto to live by, no matter what you're actually looking for.
I couldn't agree more. And the funny thing is, you're way ahead of me here, is that's what I found in my journey of losing weight. Being overweight was sort of the side effect for me not living an aligned life. And once I found that alignment, it applied to everything. And I used that as sort of a litmus test. Does this thing fit into my life and my goal of being happy? If it does, I'm all in, clearly. And if it doesn't, I pass. And it's a really strong sort of a compass within my soul now, that helps me.
Sure. It's a great, I'm not a big litmus test person, but I could see how this becomes sort of a litmus test. This is going to be something that's going to add positivity, or is it not? And it's usually a yes or no. So it's usually actually something you can do, even if you're really, even if you're not one of those deep thinkers that likes to stew over things. If you work on a reflexive action, like I'm a very reflex person,
Yeah.
Yes and no. I'm is actually much better for me sometimes than, do I have to think about this, and are there 18 shades of gray in the middle of it?
Right. And sometimes if you're doing that sort of mulling, kind of the answer is maybe not. If it's something I have to talk myself into, you have to weigh things out in life, right? Like everything is not black and white, but certainly with major decisions, like, keeping myself with, integrity with my commitment. And because I know what's going to happen if I don't, and that road does not lead me to being able to live a happy life. And travel is a big part of that for me.
So let's pivot a little bit, because obviously, you lost the weight, you wrote the book, and you wrote the book because people asked you to write the book. It wasn't because you were so, you weren't boastful and prideful. People asked you, Amy, how did you do this? Because again, your story was remarkable. You were on Dr. Oz, on his program, and you were able to share some parts of it in, the length of segment time that they have available. And then people clamored to get, find out, what was your trick? And again, everybody, and the thing we have to remember is everyone's trick is different. Yeah. But there's still some basic kind of tenets that follow for, that sort of work for a whole lot of people. And I think that's probably why you wrote the book.
Absolutely right. So I was on Dr. Oz. I had 28 million viewers. I came back to my regular job, which is working in my husband's office. And I have an unusual last name. People Googled it, found him, called him, and said, "Do you know Amy Feinberg-Trufas? And if so, could you give her my email? Because I saw her on Dr. Oz, and I need to know how she did it. Her story really resonated with me." And then at that point, Scott, I realized I'm just a regular person with a story. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nutritionist. I'm just a woman who one foot in front of the other, through trials and tribulations, figured it out, and it worked out for me. So what I decided to do was share my story with people so that I had something to give them. And my deepest wish is that it helps someone who was suffering the way I used to, because I know how devastating that suffering is. I wasn't saying yes to life. So my feeling is, if I help one person with this book, every moment of waking up every morning of waking up at 3 a.m. and working for 3 hours. And I jumped out of bed, by the way, because I was so jazzed up about like, what could I share today that might land with somebody? Will all be worth it, because I just want to help someone who feels the way I used to feel, because I know how devastating that feeling is.
That's great. That is excellent. Now, obviously, I'm sure one of the pillars, I haven't read the book yet, but I'm going to be ordering it up, of course, so I can get money off my own trip later. But
I love this idea.
one of the things is, obviously you needed to have familial support through all of this. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. And it's funny you say this, because the familial support I had was actually my deceased father, because the Norman in me, my dad's name was Norman, was very clear, which was make the life you want, be happy. But once I started to make those changes, like I said, I'm a little bit of a foodie, so I was making food that was still delicious but really good for everybody. So I wasn't throwing like iceberg lettuce on the table and saying, "Hey, this is what we all eat now." I was really trying to do creative things, and the whole point is because nobody can sustain living on iceberg for the rest of their life. It just doesn't work.
Not unless you're a rabbit, you know.
Yeah, it's got to be good food for me. It's got to taste good, and it's got to not feel like I'm missing out. That's just me. I'm into
and I think the issue of, you know, substituting this for that is kind of a real important part of, you know, switching off and maybe taking in less calories but still maintaining the taste and
Absolutely.
all. And there's certain foods that, you know, you have to sometimes watch other things like sodium levels and other things, and prepackaged foods versus fresh foods. So there's a whole lot of variables involved, and I'm sure that you address those in the book, and that's going to be a real big help for a lot of people. Now let's talk about the travel part. Obviously, you know, if like for New Year's Eve, I went on a cruise, and you know, I'm actually a rare person in that I do not gain weight on a cruise, mostly because when I'm on a cruise, I'm doing things that I'm not doing at home. When I'm at home, I'm kind of a bump on a log. I'm the first to admit it. I'm a bump on a log. I'm shocked when my Fitbit tells me I did my 10,000 steps, you know, but, you know, there are days I do. Most days I don't, admittedly. But when I'm on a cruise, I'm more active. You know, there's less downtime, you know, and I think that's important. And actually, even though there's a lot of really, you know, not so good for you foods, and this cruise had you know, I was able to have as many alcoholic beverages as I wanted to in a day, 15, which is, I only got to 7 one day. But, you know, there is a lot of temptation even in a place like that. But, you know, I basically ate healthy. Fortunately, dinner time was sit down, and they always like to drag that out a little bit. So when you travel, what kind of accommodations do you make, and how does it? And of course, when you travel, you know, the other people in the household there can basically choose whatever they want from the menu, but you can still make the right choices. How do you work on that?
So I have a few ideas about this, because again, just keep in mind, I am a foodie. And when you travel, it's important to know that the food that is at your destination is reflective of the culture and the society there. And you want to get into that, right? I don't want to travel to Spain and pick up a burger and fries. I want to try paella. I want to try flan. I want to immerse myself into the flavors of the region, and I want to get a sense for what the food is like there. That's part of the joy of travel. That's the first thing. And there's no way I'm going to stand here and tell your listeners, oh, don't eat the native food. No way. Enjoy it. Okay. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. Big thing about me, no deprivation. So the first thing is, when you go on the trip, enjoy the trip. Savor the moment. Savor the food. I'm not saying to put the feed bag on and gorge yourself, but I'm saying when you do decide to choose something that may or may not be within your calorie range, enjoy it. The worst thing you can do is eat something that you feel bad about eating and then punish yourself after with either guilt or a workout. I'm totally against that, because no retribution workout is actually good for your psyche. If you decide, like, you know, I make the joke of, let's say I'm craving a brownie one day, and in my head I'm going brownie, 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 brownie. So I reach for a couple carrots. But what am I thinking? brownie. And so I'm like, okay, I got to shut that off. Let me grab a few almonds. Now I've eaten a few almonds. Brownie. Let me try 3 or 4 chocolate chips and see if that takes care of it. Brownie. Well, by the time I've eaten all the things that I've eaten to try to get my mind off the brownie, it's more calories than the brownie would have been to begin with. And 2, I still want the damn brownie. So
it's true. No, it's true. And like I was saying just before we went on the podcast, it is absolutely okay to fall off the wagon when you're on a vacation. You just cannot stay off the wagon and never get back on it.
And I would challenge you to say you're not even falling off the wagon.
You're probably not. You're just enjoying, and
you're making a choice. You're making a choice that this little temporary, road trip off of my normal eating habits it's almost celebratory because I'm here and I'm making a choice to experience it. However, my next choice is going to be a little more aligned. I'm not going to live in that choice.
No, that's great because again, if I go down south, say if I go visit my sister in Savannah and I get shrimp and grits, I'll eat them and I'll love them. But and then if I go to Philadelphia, I'm going to go to Pat's and get a cheesesteak and I'm going to enjoy it. But I know later on, it's not like you have to. You don't necessarily make up for it because that's like a kind of a weird thing. But what you want to do is you want to say, okay, I've had that. That's great. My next meal is going to be something more, as you say, aligned with what you need to do.
I'm making my next aligned choice. And I don't even consider it making up. I just consider it my next aligned choice. I never let the last thing I did have too much importance on the next thing I do.
Well, that's good. Unless it's something like, your car breaks down and you have to call AAA, I suppose. But
we're talking about brownies, though.
That's right, brownies, and I think I have a box of brownie mix in the house here, so no doubt I'll be making those for dessert tonight. But so now tell me about some of the travels you've had and some of the food you've had that surprised you for being actually healthier than what you might have thought it was going to be up front.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is Greece. I went to Greece before the pandemic, and I'm part Greek, and it was a lifelong dream of mine to go. And the first thing I have to say is the reason I said yes to the trip was because I lost weight, and I knew that I was going to be able to. You have to be kind of fit to go to Greece if you want. Yeah,
there's a lot of walking to do, and there's ferry boats to catch, and there are a lot more moving parts to a good Grecian journey than to say some other places. There's no doubt.
Yes, I wanted to go to the top of the Acropolis. I wanted to go to the Oracle of Delphi, and those are all on foot. Now, there are some places in Greece where you can get on a burro and someone smacks the butt of the burro and they take you up the side of the mountain. We didn't come into any of those, but mine were all on foot. Had I weighed well over 300 pounds, I know I physically would not have been able to do that. It's also hot. And however, at 160, I was able to do it. And it was, I'll never forget it, being able to be at the very top of the Oracle at Delphi, where there's actually a huge stadium. And when we looked down, I don't know how many feet up, but we were one of the few people that actually went all the way to the top. A lot of people sort of stop at that about 3 tiers up. We went all the way up. It was amazing. And Greek food, like when I think about Greek food, I think about baklava and sort of the heavier, sweeter, syrupy things. But when I was there, you asked me what I was surprised about. Because Greek is such a fisherman community, there was the most amazing fresh seafood, just like thrown on the grill, a little bit of lemon and olive oil. And it was like, I'm thinking about it now, like I miss it. It was so good.
I know. I call them food orgasms when you have something that's that good. It's like all of a sudden you put it in your mouth and you're going like, oh my God.
Yeah.
It's just so good. Where have you been all my life? It's like that. So, I mean.
Yeah, I had the feeling this is how fish is supposed to taste.
Exactly, wow. Right? Yeah. It's not like how my mother used to get those frozen blocks of fish and on Friday, even though we weren't Catholic, she still made fish. And it was like, really, Mom? I love my mother, but really? Must you do that? So yeah, Greece is a good example of that because there are a lot of fresh choices there. Yeah. And like, if you go to Spain, a lot of the tapas they're small bites.
Yes.
And you get to savor them over the little glass of sangria. And there's no, it's a wonderful thing that way. And again, because of the fact that a lot of times, especially in Europe, they really take longer to eat. I think that's also a very, we as Americans, we eat way the hell too fast. Okay, and it's not just fast food from McDonald's that you're trying to eat the fries while you're driving stuff. No, just in general rule, we eat too fast. Now, I have a son who's 15. We adopted him from China along with the other two, the children I have, but he eats so slow that oftentimes we don't make fun of him, but he just eats slow. And so the thing is, though, he is 5'6" and 110, and if he continues to eat like he does, he's just going to be in those skinny pants, whatever, maybe a 30 waist when he fills out finally, but it's going to be ridiculous because just his eating style is one that's conducive to not being a weight gainer,
And of course, part of the reason for that is your body has time to signal that you're full, but if you eat fast, by the time it registers as being full, you could have potentially been overly full, rather than just being satisfied, you're stuffed, for example.
Right, exactly. And then you feel it later when you try to remove yourself from the table and all of that. And later on, you get that sort of full kind of bloated, kind of thing. And it's just not good.
I mean, there's some thought now that if you're trying to measure how much you really need to be satisfied, you should mentally break your dinner into 2 parts. Eat the first part first, wait about 5-10 minutes. If you're still hungry, start eating the second part. There's been times that I've done that and I'm good, but I never would have known because my normal thing was to just wolf the whole thing, cutting down right in the beginning. The other thing we do, I think, is eat in front of electronics. And that's another thing you don't see a lot of. People are in Europe are savoring their meal, enjoying their meal, talking with their family members. It's sort of a little bit more ceremonial rather than everybody grabbing a plate and heading, to watch Netflix or TV or iPhone or whatever.
Well, fortunately, at our dinner table, when we all meet to eat at the dinner table, we do have a no electronics rule. We'll maybe have the Alexa play some music in the background, and that's it. Don't do it now. All right, there we go. So I guess our bottom line here is, like Rome wasn't built in a day, but you can still do what you need to do. And your book is not only going to be good for people who are looking maybe to lose that, morbid obesity, or even not so morbid obesity like me, who might need to lose 40 pounds or so, but it probably has a lot of good life lessons for others. Can you talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. It's I joke around that the book is called Food, Eat with Ease Every Day. And the word food is huge here, right? It's big.
Right.
But the funny thing is it's got very little to actually do with food. And what I would challenge your listeners to think about in their own life is what is happening in their life that does not feel aligned. That's the bottom line. In my world, it was food and the way I interacted with food. I have a friend who's reading this and she's thinking about her occupation. Like what I wrote in this book about food, she's thinking like, man, this is exactly how I feel about my work. Like, I know there's something completely different I need to do. I'm scared to leave my old job. I'm scared to make a commitment to myself. Well, using some of the ideas in the book, she can actually like sort of plan out how a change like that might affect her. And if it's something she wants to, to continue to investigate. So it's really my journey is about food, but the takeaway message for the reader, I think, is how to live in a life that's really aligned with your deepest desire for yourself. I've had an outpouring of support from people. It's just been amazing. There's people who are private messaging me saying, I was abused as a child. I really resonate with some of the stories that you shared. And now I realize that I have some deep work to do. And, you've kind of shown me the way how to unfold that and be vulnerable to come out and make that next step. And what I share with people is you do have to be a little bit brave to do something like this, because there's an element of, oh, this might not work out. I'm going to fail again. It's not going to work. But to me at that moment, the only bigger thing than all those feelings was regret. I knew how I wanted to live, and I was too old to be chicken to try again. And I just decided to commit and align to that commitment and commit to my commitment. And that's what I have. That's what I do every day. I recommit to my commitment, and it feels great. One quick thing I want to say about traveling and you brought this up, Scott, but I wanted to comment on it, is when you're away in a place like Spain or Rome or Italy or Greece, I am so much more active. Like I do work out a little bit here, but there was a day I looked out at my phone, I had something like 17,000 steps. So go ahead and have the bite of baklava.
Oh yeah, it's true.
Man, it's like you need the fuel at that point because you are rocking and rolling. And go on a trip, eat the food, be active, get on the donkey, live. That's the beautiful thing about travel. I've never come back from a trip where I regretted it.
No, I understand that, except you regretted having to do the laundry afterwards.
Oh, no kidding, that's different.
That's a different thing. It absolutely is. Well, Amy, I really appreciate you being on the podcast today. One more time, give a plug for your book. Tell us where you can find it, and we'll wrap it up. So give us one more plug.
Absolutely. It's called Food, Eat with Ease Every Day, and it's available on Amazon. I have it both in hardcover and paperback. You can also get it as a Kindle, and I am working on an audio version.
Well, there you go. That's really excellent. And remember, folks, if you buy her book and can show me a receipt for buying her book, I will take that price. It's not much money, but it's like a thank you to Amy and a thank you to me for considering her book and considering me for travel. I'll take that price off for an upcoming trip of 4 days or more, only because 4 days is probably the least amount of time you should be away on vacation, because anything less, you're going to be too rushed, and it's just not going to be much fun. So I appreciate Amy for being on. This has been the Walters Wandering Travel Podcast. We'll catch you with another edition coming up soon. Take care, everyone, and have a great day.